The paper pressed against the chain-link fence, small and determined, held up by a boy who had never once spoken a word in his life. Mason Reed had just struck out on 3 pitches, the worst at-bat of his week, and he was walking back toward the dugout with his jaw tight when he noticed the drawing waving at him from beyond the outfield fence. He almost kept walking, almost, but something about the intensity in the boy's face, total concentration, no trace of mockery, no trace of pity either, made him stop and cross the grass to look. It wasn't a child's drawing of a baseball player. It was his own batting stance, sketched with startling precision, a small red arrow pointing at his back foot. "What is this?" Mason asked, half amused, crouching down at the fence. The boy didn't answer. He simply pointed at the arrow, then pointed at his own foot, then mimed a small, deliberate shift. Mason looked at the sketch again, more carefully this time, and felt something click uncomfortably into place. His back foot had been drifting for weeks. Nobody in the dugout had caught it. An 11-year-old boy in a wheelchair, sitting outside the fence with a scorebook on his lap, had caught it in one at-bat. "Kid," Mason said slowly, "who taught you to watch baseball like this?" Noah Bennett had been sitting in that exact spot outside the fence for 3 seasons now, and Laura Bennett, his mother, had learned to bring a blanket for his lap and an extra bottle of water for herself, because Noah never wanted to leave before the final out, no matter how late the game ran or how tired her feet got after an 8-hour shift at the diner. Noah had been born non-speaking. That part of him had never changed, never needed fixing, simply a different way of moving through the world that Laura had spent 11 years teaching him to be unashamed of. The wheelchair was newer. 5 years now, since the night an icy mountain road took the car out from under them during a snowstorm, took Noah's father, Daniel, and left Noah with a spinal injury that changed how he'd move through the rest of his life. Daniel used to take Noah to games before the accident, teaching him to keep score in an old scorebook with careful, patient hands, explaining every position and pitch count like it was the most important information in the world. After the accident, that scorebook became one of the only pieces of his father Noah had left untouched by loss. He carried it to every single game, filling its pages with a precision that went far beyond simple scorekeeping. Every pitch, every swing, every subtle shift in a player's stance, all of it recorded in a code only Noah fully understood. Laura had watched her son build an entire language out of that scorebook, out of drawings and numbers and small careful gestures, because words had never been the way Noah spoke to the world. She'd protected that language fiercely for years, wary of strangers who looked at Noah and saw only what he'd lost instead of what he actually carried. Mason Reed, kneeling at the fence with Noah's sketch still in his hands, was the first stranger in a long time who seemed to be looking at the right thing entirely. The next day, during batting practice, Mason adjusted his back foot exactly the way Noah's arrow had shown him. The ball connected clean and hard, sailing further than it had in weeks. He found Noah at the fence before the following game, crouching down to his level, the way he had the first time. "You were right," he said simply. "I don't know how you saw that, but you were right." Noah's face lit with something Laura hadn't seen in longer than she wanted to admit. Pure, uncomplicated pride, the particular joy of being understood by someone who hadn't needed him to speak first. "I'm Mason," he said, extending a hand toward the fence. "What's your name?" Noah flipped to a fresh page in his scorebook and wrote it carefully. "Noah." "Well, Noah," Mason said, "would you mind teaching me a few more things about my swing?" Laura watched the friendship build slowly over the following weeks, cautious at first, the old protective instinct hard to fully set down after years of strangers treating Noah like something fragile to feel sorry for. But Mason never once looked at the wheelchair like it was the most important thing about the boy sitting in it. He came to the fence before every home game, asking Noah what he'd noticed, listening, really listening, to drawings and gestures and numbers, the way most people only listen to spoken words. "He sees things I don't," Mason told Laura one evening, watching Noah sketch a defensive pattern in his scorebook with quick, sure strokes. Not because he's trying hard, because he's actually paying attention to the whole field instead of just the ball. His father taught him that, Laura said quietly, something loosening in her chest that had been tight for 5 long years. Daniel used to say baseball's not really about the ball at all. It's about everything happening around it. Mason looked at the old scorebook resting on Noah's lap, worn soft at the corners from years of careful handling. This was his? Laura nodded. One of the only things that survived the accident. Noah's never gone anywhere without it since. Mason arranged, with the coaching staff's permission, for Noah to watch one practice from inside the stadium instead of outside the fence. Noah froze at first, overwhelmed by proximity he'd never experienced before. The sound of bats connecting up close, the smell of cut grass, an entire field suddenly visible from an angle he'd never had access to. Then he started noticing things nobody else had caught. Frank Dawson, the team's 62-year-old assistant coach, dismissed the idea outright the first time Mason suggested listening to an 11-year-old's observations. That skepticism lasted exactly one practice, until Noah correctly predicted, through a rapid series of drawings, a pitcher's repeated tell before his next pitch. A small shoulder movement nobody on the coaching staff had flagged in weeks of film review. Frank studied the drawing a long moment, then looked at Noah with something considerably more respectful than skepticism. "Kid's got an eye," he admitted quietly to Mason. "I'll give him that." The turning point arrived during a tense playoff game, Mason struggling badly at the plate, the crowd's patience visibly thinning with every missed swing. Laura noticed Noah bent intently over his scorebook, pencil moving fast, before he tore the page free and pressed it against the fence. A simple sketch of Mason's swing, one word beneath it: wait. Mason saw it on his way back to the dugout and carried the image with him to his next at-bat. Instead of rushing the pitch the way frustration had been pushing him to all game, he waited, patient, controlled, exactly the way an 11-year-old boy outside the fence had told him to. The ball cleared the fence on the next pitch. The stadium exploded. Mason didn't celebrate with his teammates first. He walked straight toward the fence where Noah and Laura stood waiting, breathless, and found Noah already holding his scorebook open to a fresh page. "I knew you could." Mason's throat tightened unexpectedly, blindsided by how much 4 simple words could hold. His own father had believed in him exactly that fiercely once, years before he'd made it to the majors, and something about Noah's quiet certainty reached back through time and touched that same old memory. "Thank you," Mason said, voice rough, crouching down to Noah's eye level. "You have no idea what that means." At the end of the season, the team didn't turn Noah into a ceremonial mascot or a photo opportunity. They created an official junior baseball observer program instead, inviting him to attend practices and study alongside the coaching staff. His insight treated as exactly what it was, genuinely valuable, not simply inspiring. Laura watched her son roll through the stadium gates for the first time. No fence between him and the field anymore. His father's old scorebook resting steady in his lap. Noah looked back at her once, then turned his attention toward the field ahead, and Laura understood, watching him go, that she'd spent 5 years teaching Noah how to survive what he'd lost. Somewhere along the way, without her fully realizing it, Noah had found something entirely his own, a future that had nothing to do with loss at all. Mason found Noah near the dugout before the next game, settling into the seat beside him. "So," he said, smiling, "what did I miss?" Noah turned his scorebook around. On the page was a drawing of 3 people standing together beside a baseball field. His father, his mother, and Mason, all 3 of them finally in the same frame. For the first time in 5 years, Noah wasn't watching the game from outside the fence. He was part of it. If this story reminded you that some of the most important things are said without a single word, share it with someone who needs that reminder today. Leave it a like, and stay a little longer. There's always another story worth telling.